Good evening. This here is my old Gazelle bicycle that I inherited from my uncle. It's the Gazelle bicycle that for a long time didn't have a third gear. But I fixed that problem a while back. But at the moment first gear is sounding a bit strange, especially when pedaling hard. I think this problem started a while back when I squirted in a whole lot of WD-40 in order to free up the poles for third gear. Looks like some of the WD-40 that I squirted in is already coming out. Luckily I have a spare wheel ready to go. Otherwise this video would get very long. Right now it's time to flip this bicycle. Before I'm going to place this bicycle upside down, I will have to remove this Brooks B66 leather saddle that I fixed up last spring. Here's that M8 bolt that I installed. Looks like this is not fitting a regular 13mm spanner. I'll be right back. Here's my modified 13mm spanner, especially for these Brooks leather saddle. It also works on the tensioning pin. This saddle, by the way, sits great. It's probably the best sitting leather saddle that I own. That's probably loose enough. Well, oh yeah, I just remembered there's some damage on this seat post. There actually is a lot of damage on the seat post on the back here. So I decided to just remove most of the clamp, if that is possible. It is good. I don't know how well this will show up on camera, but the back of this clamp, lock, strap, whatever, is digging into the seat post. And that is why it is no longer able to slide up. So taking off part of the clamp, lock, strap, whatever, was the easier option. Alright, now it's time to flip this thing upside down. I almost forgot to twist the bell out of the way. And also the shifting mechanism. Otherwise the bicycle will tip over. Finally the bicycle is upside down and I placed the handlebar on a piece of cardboard. So now I can begin the removal process of this rear wheel. That's a weird sound. So the chain is definitely a bit too long and probably worn. But when the bicycle is on its wheels, it is not really noticeable. It sounds a bit weird now. I'm placing my foot on the frame, and now I'm trying to twist the wheel, and there's not a whole lot of sideways play, but there are some knackering sounds coming from the hub. Maybe it's the bearings. The wheel is also not spinning completely through, but I believe there is a broken spoke somewhere. There it is. So that will have to be replaced. So now I will probably have to let go of the air. But that's okay, because I will have to swap the tires anyway. although I'm not completely sure this is necessary. I better keep this somewhere safe. Next I'm going to take out the indicator pin. Lots of brown grease mixed with some WD-40. It can definitely use a clean. Now I'm going to take off the brake rod and the brake reaction arm. And of course that fell on the floor. Next I'm going to take off this rear section of the chain guard. Whoa. Check out that amount of grease. That probably all came out of the hub somehow. It definitely was not on the chain. I guess it came out of the bearings that sit behind the driver for the hub. So next I'm going to loosen up the axle nuts. This will probably also have to come off, and I think I can leave the no, I don't think I can leave the anti-rotation washers. I'll take them off. They are being difficult. Okay, I got it. One of them. The other side, this is a washer, a regular washer, and now I should probably take off the chain. Moving the wheel forward. Oh, that's probably not possible because of the chain tensioner. Almost enough room. Loosening up the other chain tensioner. Moving the whole wheel forward. And now I can take off the chain, and I should be able to take off the wheel. It is already backed up against the mudguard, even though I took out all of the air. Come on! Come on! The mudguard is stuck. The mudguard stay is stuck between the frame and the axle. Now I should be able to. And it is still being difficult. And by now my tea is cold. Get the... There it is. Somehow this chain tensioner was stuck between the frame and the axle. But now I got it free at last. So next I need to swap this cog and this tire onto my rebuilt Sturmey Archer wheel with a cartridge that I took from a 1980s Gazelle bicycle, also with rod brakes. But I'm not going to film all of that because I will probably launch this surf clip into a lower Earth orbit. I'm better than Elon Musk at launching shit. Mr. Musk can only tinker with his electric cars, his electric dinky toys. I'm not a fan of electric cars. They are a big scam, if you ask me. A big waste of government money. A black pit for subsidies. And they will definitely not save this world. So the tire is already gone and on the other rim. And I wasn't able to launch this circlip. I guess a successful launch is only possible when the camera is rolling. If you listen carefully, you can hear that it is starting to rain. I guess that's the sound of autumn, although you can also hear it in well, basically every season. There is a lot of grease that came out of this hub after I squirted in some WD-40 through this indicator pin opening. I am kinda curious how this hub will look like on the inside. When I got the bicycle, no gear was working, so I took this hub apart, and that was actually my first Sturmey Archer hub that I saw on the inside. And well, you can already see that I used a lot of grease when I reassembled this hub. So for this new hub that I built, I used some gearbox oil and some grease for on the bearings. Hopefully that will work out better, but at some point I will definitely put some oil in the hub through the indicator pin, or through that loop point on the side of the hub, because on that 80s hub there is still a oil point. At some point I will make a video where I disassemble this hub and have a look inside, because there might be a knackered bearing in here. Not sure what's going on here. There's hardly any sideways play. And it doesn't feel like there's a lot of play on the driver. Maybe I set the bearings too tight. But the wheel is spinning nice. Not a lot of resistance. Keeps going and going. There are just some weird sounds. I guess it will all be revealed in time. And here's that replacement wheel with freshly re-greased and re-oiled Sturmey Archer cartridge, and I retensioned all of the spokes, although I might have set the spoke tension a bit high. But yeah, I don't have a what's it called, a measuring device for spoke tension, so I guess sometimes you just have to wing it. And these stainless steel spokes were already installed by somebody else. There is some sideways play, but that was intentional. I thought it was a good idea. Alright, now I'm going to try and install this cog, this heavily worn cog. And next a little spacer, that was placed on the outside of the cork. I'm not really sure if it should be on the outside or on the inside. I guess both can work. And now you can see me try and install this damn circlip. Let's see if I will have a good day. Almost. But not completely. Let's try again. Oh yeah, that was successful. There is still some play, more than I like. I'll see if I have another spacer. This time I placed a spacer on the inside and on the outside of the cork, and it definitely is a lot better. Alright, I think I'm done here. Let's go back to the bicycle. Well, reinstalling this wheel is basically the reverse of that whole session you just skipped. Rightfully so, I must say, because it was probably very boring. And now I'm hoping that the chain will not fall off the front chain ring, because then I will have to find the chain and get it back on the chain ring. Alright, next I shouldn't forget the chain tensioners, because I always forget those. One for the left, or actually it's the right, because the bicycle is upside down. This axle looks a bit narrow. Yeah, what's going on here? Is it me, or is there actually a problem? There's more than a centimeter of space here. Am I forgetting something? Or maybe the width of these axles changed from the 80s to the 90s. I'll measure the distance on this wheel and on the old wheel. So this is the original wheel, and well, it's kind of hard to measure, but the width of the axle is close to 120 millimeters, and there is a design difference in this drum brake lining, and this original wheel uses a higher nut on the axle, a lock nut. I know that this drum brake lining is very oily, and I was planning to just leave it alone, but I'm going to take off this this lock nut, this higher lock nut, and put that on that 1980s hub. So I guess you're going to get a look inside this drum brake that is probably filled with WD-40. If I spin the drum brake lining, I will also spin off the cone. I guess that's something I learned when I replaced the cone on that 1980s hub. A washer, another washer, and a weird adjustable lock washer that fits over the cone, and now I can take off the drum brake lining. Ta-da-da-da, ta-da-da-da, it's stuck, ta-da-da-da, like I expected, very greasy. Check that out. I should leave it for when I disassemble this hub in another video. Alright, I got my nut. Let's put this all back together. The weird looking lock washer that fits over the cone. A couple of normal washers. And now I should probably get another nut. Here's a fin lock nut that came from a Sachs torpedo. Let's find out if it has the correct thread. And I believe it does. So next I need to install that nut on that old 1980s hub. And this here is the 1980s replacement wheel, and I guesstimate that this is close to 110 millimeters, maybe 108. So that's a lot narrower than the original wheel. So I definitely need this extra nut in order to make this axle wide enough, because I don't want to pinch the frame too much. A little, no problem, because this is only a temporary setup. At some point I'm hoping to place the original wheel back inside this bicycle. This setup is still too narrow. It looks narrower than the original setup. So I'm going to add an extra washer here. Hopefully that will be enough. If not, I will add just more washers. This one is rated. It's also too small. I'll look for another washer. Here's a big fat one, and it is big enough. So that's what I'm going to use. Alright, let's try this again. Here comes the wheel again. It looks still way too narrow. I guess I need more washers, but I'll continue this another time because it's late and it's time for me to go to bed. So good morning. I just added a couple of extra washers, one on the left and one on the right. Let's see how this is going to work out. I think with the chain tensioners I should get pretty close enough to pinch up the frame. Apparently I need to take off the chain from the cog to create enough room for the axle to slide far enough backwards in order to install the axle between the frame. All those extra washers created a nice holding place for the chain. Okay, moving on. Looks like I could have used another washer, but it is close. And the bracket for the brake reaction arm also lines up nicely. Next, let's install the chain tensioners. I just noticed that both of these chain tensioners are cracked. This one looks worse than that one, but they still feel stronger than I expected. But at some point I will definitely have to replace these. So here's one of those plastic chain tensioner brackets and a nut to keep them in place. That's probably enough tension. So next I got one of these anti-rotation washers with an air, and that air kind of falls over the chain tensioner bolt. So I always install these bent pieces to the rear. Not sure if that's the best way of installing them, because the frame is definitely stronger if you place these bent brackets to the front. But yeah, it's my call. Let's also fix up the mudguard stay. And here's another washer. Not sure if that is needed. And this is the Sturmey Archer nut. That is kind of hard to start. I think there's some damage on the Sturmey Archer axle. Alright, now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So for this next shot I had to turn the bicycle around, so hopefully at least one person will get to see this. First let's try and line up this bracket. It is still a bit offset. It is not as nice as I thought it would be. So I'm going to mount the bracket to the side of this bracket. That should work. There's no problem. I did it before with coaster brake hubs. So I found a new bolt because the old one was rather rusty. You know what? I'm going to put a washer in between. Yeah, not necessary. And I have a nylock nut this time, because I never found that nut that I dropped. Okay, the camera is in my way, so excuse me if I hit the camera, because I'm really close to the lens. Yeah, it's not working. Next tool, because the only thing you were seeing was the back of my hand. This bolt is too low, and because of the shape of the bracket, the socket doesn't slip over the hex head. I'll worry about this later. So here's the plastic bracket, and of course the nut is gone. So it really took me forever to find this stupid chain tensioner nut. Sometimes I don't know. I kinda lose everything and I'm starting to doubt my own mind. Alright, but it did allow me to reposition the camera for a new perspective. I must say this axle, Sturmey Archer axle, is probably shorter because there's not a whole lot of thread left. Probably enough, but it is short. Maybe I should remove that thick nut and just pinch the whole frame just a little bit more, but I'll probably try it like this. It's not like the wheel is rolling out by itself. Now the brake rod just a little bit tighter, and I think now it's time to tighten up these axle nuts. The chain tensioner is being pinched a bit by the mudguard stay. Maybe that is why it broke. I did install a washer behind the mudguard stay, but it is possible. But it is something to consider for the next time, when I have bought new plastic chain tensioners. So here we are on the other side of the bicycle again. I think I will tension the chain just a little bit more. Well, it's probably too much, but for now I will leave it like this. Yeah, that's definitely too much. I'll back this off half a turn, and then I will nip this nut, the Sturmey Archer indicator pin nut, up, so the wheel looks well, nice enough between the frame. So I'll nip this up. There's more play on the bearing than I like. How did that happen? It's definitely a lot more than when I had the wheel in the vise. Well, at this point I can not yet see the Sturmey Archer nut through this opening on the side. So that will make setting the indicator pin tension difficult. Yeah, I'm not sure about this display. It is definitely too much. More problems than I thought possible, or challenges. Not sure if I like them. I should probably take the wheel out again and retension the bearings, but to be honest, I'm kinda sick of this project, so I'm going to tighten up the brake reaction arm, close the chain case, and just test it like it is. It definitely needs a new chain, and I really need to refurbished the original axle because it is wider. But for now I'm done and I'm going to close the patient. Of course I need to set up the indicator pin, and this chain is a bit damaged, so I believe I only screwed the indicator chain in a few turns, and then I hooked up the oh, forgot that bracket. Just my luck. I guess I can make room by removing this washer. It's not really needed. That's one turn, two turns. I think that's good. And this tension inside this hub is a lot less. It's easier to pull this little chain. Okay, so it's all back together, and I'll be honest with you, it doesn't feel all that great. And I think that heavily worn chain is probably to blame. The clicking sound is a lot brighter, so that's kind of nice. But when I'm back pedaling, there's definitely some tension, some resistance, some parts of the stroke. Yeah. You can actually see the wheel turning backwards. I think that's because I set the chain too tight. So I will quickly back off the chain tensioners a bit, but I'm not going to film that. So I adjusted the chain tension, and it is feeling a little bit better. Most of that resistance when backpedaling is gone, and I noticed that the non-dry side axle nut wasn't really nipped up, but still there is too much play on the cones, but it is not worse than on my SAS 5-speed, so I'm sure it will survive for a while, long enough for me to refurbish the original wheel. And I'm reasonably sure that these mudguard stays have pinched these plastic chain tensioners to destruction, and I probably did this. Yeah, lesson learned. It is a bit rattly, and I did try to adjust this cone, but it is basically impossible for me to grab the cone with this cone wrench. That washer that I installed is also in the way, and I think the problem is on the other side. I probably set the non-adjustable cone on the other side too loose. It is something to keep in mind for the next time. Oh, I just noticed that the wire for the rear light has been cut over here. That explains why the light is not working. No problem, I have a battery operated rear light. Alright, let's put the bicycle back on its wheels. Now it's time for some air. Yeah, that's good enough for now. Yep, that's definitely an amateur job, but let's try it out anyway. But I do need my saddle before I can take a test ride. Hopefully this installing this lock, clamp, strap, whatever, in this non-conventional way isn't going to be a pain in the ass. Now there are 2 washers, one for each side, and a couple of nuts. Hey, that wasn't too bad. Hopefully things will not move later on. Damn gravity! I got my spanner back after it tried to escape. I think something like this should be okay. Let's try and line it up with the frame. Alright, let's snip this up. And I'm definitely taking this spanner with me on my test ride. Okay, now I am basically done. So thanks for tinkering with me. And the only thing left for me to do is take this bicycle out for a test ride. And I'm not sure if I'm going to bring the camera. I might do that another day. Although the weather doesn't look too bad.